Number 1.
Since it's starting to get colder in the upper Midwest, I decided that I would share some of my grandfather's stories he told me about his time working as a forester in Michigan's Manistee National Forest. He never got a chance to write any of his experiences down, so I thought I might post them here. For some background, my grandpa started working in the Manistee area in 1949 when he was 28 years old. Before then, he had been drifting around the region, doing odd jobs in the logging until he was hired by the Forest Service in the northwest part of Michigan's Lower Peninsula. The work, as I understand, was slow, and most days he and his crew were sent to different parts of the forest to address various tree and land concerns. Grandpa was always an avid outdoorsman, and he enjoyed hunting and fishing just about as much as anyone in the region. Sadly, he died in the December of 1998, when I was still rather young. But I remember whenever we went to visit him and Grandma, he would sit my brother and me down and tell us about his days in the Forest Service. Working outside every day allowed him to witness all sorts of wildlife, like black bear, white-tailed fox, and even bobcat back in those days. He often relived his encounters with bears while he was deep in the forest, telling us that those moments were some of the most memorable of his life, being up close to such beautiful and powerful animals. Usually, his tales were exciting, and the enthusiasm with which he told them inspired us to go out to the backyard and look for animals in between the pines. Although there wasn't much wildlife around Grandma and Grandpa's property, they still always kept a close eye on us and never let us wander too far from the house. Finally, a few years before his death, Grandpa deemed my brother and me old enough to be told why. I was about 9, and my brother was about 11, when Grandpa first opened up about the strangest things that had ever happened to him. All our childhoods, we had heard him go on and on about the peace that the wilderness brought him, or used to bring him. But this time, his tone was completely different. I don't remember all the details, but I asked my brother to help piece together Grandpa's story, and my dad as well. He too had heard of the experience in question multiple times. It was the mid-50s. He never gave the exact year, and October had rolled in, behind cool autumn breezes and the sound of Canada geese flying southward. The first of his strange stories had occurred at night, as he was driving home from a local bar where he and his crew had spent the last few hours after work. It was a windy night, and the pines on either side of the road were blowing ferociously. No moon or stars could be seen through thick cloud cover, so the only illumination of the road ahead came from Grandpa's headlights. By his reckoning, he must have been going close to 50 miles per hour at the very moment when something huge leapt across the road, not 20 feet ahead of him. His headlights had shown the animal's silhouette. It was dog-shaped, but massive, almost stretching all the way across the road. It only made one bound to get from one side to the other, and its size alone was enough to unnerve Grandpa. At the time, he had assumed that the animal was just a very large wolf, except timber wolves hadn't been spotted in that region for decades. He considered it a bizarre encounter, but nothing came of it that night, and he was able to return home without anything else strange happening to him. The second of his stories, admittedly, frightened me enough to avoid going outside at night for years. Even now, I'm wary of noises in the dark because of the obvious fear in Grandpa's voice when he told us of his second experience. Some details here were provided by my dad. It occurred in the same month as his first encounter, a few weeks later in fact, on a night that was pretty cold for the season. It maybe hit 40 degrees, but it was a calm night with little wind. Grandpa's house at the time was really small, and it stood in a lot with about 6 other similarly sized and built houses. None of his neighbors tended to stay up very late, so it surprised him to be wakened by loud noises at about 1 in the morning. They sounded like scratching on sheet metal, with occasional thumps and bumps, like an animal was trying to get in. Grandpa apparently got up, fetched a flashlight, put on his boots, and went out into the front room, the walls of which consisted of mosquito screens, stretched between wood and framework. Once in the front room, Grandpa could hear the sounds more clearly, and they were coming from the nearest of his neighbors' homes, maybe 50 yards to the right. It was incredibly dark out there, with no streetlights to illuminate. The neighbor's house had a porch light on, but Grandpa couldn't make out what was creating the racket through the screen. So he slowly opened the front door and looked out. He described to us in great detail the animals that he saw there, and he always said that he would remember them exactly as they were, for fear Brand's memory is the strongest. 3 massive dogs, covered in long black hair, were up against his neighbor's house, scratching at the siding and making visible claw marks with every swipe. Each beast stood about 7 feet tall, with their front legs stretching for another 2 or 3 feet, and easily reaching the roofing and the gutter of the house. Their scratching, however, did not make it seem like they were trying to get into the house, as Grandpa explained. He thought that they were doing that to get whoever was inside out. The next part was actually the hardest to get out of Grandpa. It was strange that he was so eager to tell us everything thus far, despite how he felt about the subject, but he was rather hesitant, as I remember, to divulge the last horrifying details of his encounter. That the animals then noticed that he had emerged from his own house, just across the lawn, for each one turned to look at him, just 50 yards away. They had pointed ears like wolves, and huge bodies that rivaled large black bears in size. They also supported themselves, not with 4 legs, like any other native mammal, but instead, they stood on 2 legs each, towering 7 feet above the ground. The sounds that they proceeded to make, Grandpa had said, would haunt his dreams for the rest of his life. It was a shame that he could neither produce recordings nor accurately mimic those so unwolf-like screams the animals made, for that detail always fascinated me the most about his story. They didn't sound like foxes, coyotes, or bobcats. Instead, they forced half-scream, half-howls out of their jaws that Grandpa was sure held the teeth of a carnivore's. Grandpa never told us exactly what happened next. I guess we assumed that he ran inside, locked the doors, and didn't look outside until morning. He would tell us that 4 of his neighbors, including the elderly couple that lived in the nearest house, didn't stick around very long. He did say that he tried to talk to them about what had happened that night, but they remained evasive and never gave him any straight answers. That turned out to be somewhat ironic, because Grandpa himself kept tight-lipped about many of the details of his stories. He would say that he heard those exact screams on 2 other occasions, both times while in the Manistee Forest, and he showed us an old Forest Service report detailing a possible timber wolf sighting in the area, complete with photographs of huge padded paw prints in mud. The thing is, Grandpa never told anyone his stories but his most trusted family, which is unique among Michigan dogman witnesses. After the craze of Steve Cook's legend, song, stirred in the 80s, it's no wonder that so many stories from the region surfaced. I had heard a few bits and pieces about the so-called monster before Grandpa told his tale, but it wasn't until later in life that I realized his encounters had to have been with the same creature. Whether I believe him, that massive wolves walk upright through Michigan forest, well, I'm still not so sure. But as a modern zoological curiosity, the stories of strange beasts from a passionate woodsman who knew his wildlife certainly remain among the most remarkable I've heard, simply because of the genuine emotion with which he related his tales. Legends like these might just be figments of our collective imagination, So all I can do is present what I've heard and let others judge for themselves what is real and what is pure fiction. Anyway, as the song goes, don't go out at night.
Number 2.
It happened a while back, when I was little, so I can only retell what she told me. To give you an idea of where we lived at the time, it was in a forest area with a fair distance to our neighbors. So my mom and I were home alone. I was 1 at the time, and my dad was working late. After dinner, there was a knock at the door. My mom thought it was strange because she didn't hear a car come up our long gravel driveway. She cautiously opened the door, which is attached to a chain, which stops it from fully opening, to see a middle-aged man standing there who smelled like a bad BO booze. "Can I help you?" My mom asked, a bit worried about our recent visitor. Can I come in?" the stranger asked. "No, sorry," said my mom, not trying to arrogate the man. "Oh." It was a sort of disappointing oath, as if my mom destroyed his biggest dream. My mom shut the door and watched him through the window, but the man didn't leave. He just wandered around the front. Mom quickly grabbed me, ran for the phone, and called the police and my dad. The police quickly arrived to find the man had gone, but stayed with my mom until my dad got home. They advised us to lock the doors and call if we see him again. Nothing happened at all until the next morning, when Mom went to go check the mail. Next to the driveway is a grassy field. She's noticed some grass was flattened. There was the man, lying out, passed out drunk. Mom screamed, ran inside, phoned the police. The man was arrested, and my parents were told he was mentally unstable and prone to random violence. What could have happened if he lashed out at my mom or broke in and found me, a 1-year-old child, lying, watching as he abused my mother?
Number 3.
I lived in a small village with 2 large cities on each side. We have 2 large grocery stores, and sometimes people from the cities come to shop here since it is quieter. There's a lot of social interaction, so usually we know who comes from the cities and who actually live here. A few weeks ago, I, a 30-year-old woman, was doing some groceries. I greeted some people, found the things I needed, and helped a young girl, aged 6 or so, with grabbing tea from a high shelf. I thought I recognized her to be the kid of an old schoolmate, but didn't ask her, or really say more than "Here you are." She sent me a large smile back, and I thought that she looked really adorable. I was nearly done when I saw the girl again. She was sitting hand in hand with a man, and I thought he might be her father. And when she looked at me, I sent her a smile. It was very clear that he wasn't in fact her father. When she yelled out, "Mom," and ripped her hand away from him and ran at me, only to wrap her arms around me. I was startled for a moment, but then wrapped my arms around her and glared at the man. I demanded to know who he was, but he turned around and quickly stalked off to another aisle. I wanted to go after him, but that was kind of hard with a kid hanging off of my waist. A kid who was now weeping. I'm no good with kids, but I tried to comfort her and figured I should go to a cash register and ask if somebody could call for a mom when she arrived. She was indeed my old schoolmate. When the girl finally had calmed down, the man was long gone. But she told us that he had complimented her hair and wanted to take her to an Italian ice cream parlor, which was 2 streets over. He had grabbed her by her wrist, not her hand, like I had thought at first, and she actually had bruises. We reported it with the management from the store. I could actually give him a good description of the man and gave our contact info. He said he would check the security footage too and also send the info to the police. I haven't been contacted about it, but the cashier told me last time that they actively keep an eye open for that guy.
Number 4.
Ever since I was a young child, I've always had strange encounters with ghosts, but this one story still scares me today. Probably about a month ago, late at night, I was on my phone watching some YouTube videos. When I saw something by my bed, I ignored it thinking it was my white comforter, so I simply looked back at my screen, but I couldn't focus when I was watching, so I tugged my comforter, making it flat, but it was still there. I remember a fear came over me, making me still as I could be. I went to look at it. There it was. It looked like a small child, wearing a sheet ghost costume with eyes cut out. Let me tell you, I have no younger siblings, and I was the only one still up. I just sat there for a minute, looking at it. When I regained my movement, I went over to my phone to turn my flashlight settings on, and when I grabbed my phone and turned it on, the white ghost was gone. Since then, paranormal things have been happening to me. I've tried to find out what it meant, but no answer.
Number 5.
So recently, just over a month ago, my cousin Charlie was allowed to sleep, which he wasn't allowed to often, as he always had to look after his younger sisters. My parents were out, so it would just be me, Charlie, and my brother Grady, who is 8. We stayed upstairs. With Grady, I made a deal with Grady. He could stay up as long as he wanted, just as he left me and Charlie alone. So he stayed in his room all night. Me and Charlie did the usual stuff. Eat food, watch a movie, play video games. You know, normal boy stuff. At 12:30 a.m., Charlie was fast asleep on the long sofa as we were sleeping in the living room. Since he was taller, he got the bigger sofa, leaving me with this small, uncomfortable sofa. After a while, I realized I wasn't getting any sleep anytime soon, so I turned the TV back on to see if there was anything to watch. Nothing really great. The back door leading to my garden was connected to the living room. It had glass windows on it, so I could easily look outside if it wasn't dark and if I hadn't closed the blinds to cover the door. After about half an hour of watching TV, I began to hear light tapping on the back door window. I thought nothing of it, probably just the wind, I told to myself. After a while, the tapping stopped to my relief. I just lied there, beginning to drift off. I was only awoken by a gentle breeze. I lifted up slightly, wondering where that sudden cold was coming from, until to my horror, I looked over to the back door, which was open. The blinds had forcibly been pulled over the ceiling. I began to realize that I didn't lock the back door earlier. I crept over to Charlie and quietly shook him awake. "Charlie, Charlie," I whispered, hoping not to notify whoever was in the house that I was awake. After a while, he slowly lifted up and batted his eyelids. I covered his mouth so he didn't make noise. "There's someone in the house," I whispered to him. The panic was clear in my voice. We both got up and slowly tiptoed upstairs. I began to regret not grabbing a kitchen knife, or a weapon, in fact, to defend myself. First, we looked into my brother's room. The room was illuminated by his TV screen. He was fast asleep. We checked the bathroom. No one in there either. We then walked over to my parents' room. Charlie put on his flashlight on his phone, and we walked in. We investigated the room, using the flashlight to light up whatever we needed to look. However, my heart stopped as I heard the door behind us creep open. In a split second, Me and Charlie dropped to the floor, snuck under my parents' bed. The sheet covered the bottom of the bed, so we couldn't be seen. I began to paint wildly. Charlie put his hand over my mouth to stop me. We both began panicking more as we heard heavy footsteps walk through the room. I couldn't control my breathing, and now neither could Charlie. We just hoped maybe my parents would get home early, or the man would leave, but he didn't. He walked closer to the bed, and my heart rushed to my throat as the footsteps stopped. Charlie peered under the sheets and blocked our view. He quickly got closer to me and whispered, "He is right there." Tears began to roll down my face. I was truly scared for my life. As I began to hear the floorboards creak as the man bent down on one knee, you could see his hand on the sheet. He was ready to pull this sheet up, but for some reason, he let go. He walked away from the bed. We heard him walk downstairs. We realized the door was knocking as we emerged from under the bed. We went to look outside of my little brother's bedroom window. We saw blue lights of police cars flashing. We only found out that our neighbors had been smoking in their backyard when they realized someone was climbing over our back gate, and they phoned the police. After checking the premises, the police made it in the clear. The man was gone. I could tell Charlie felt relieved, but I couldn't stop thinking about what would happen if the neighbors decided to have an early night.
What is up, y'all? Thanks to my fellow clown friend, Clown Smirk, for this collab. We're both clowns, so we get along quite well. I'm a little bit more scarier than he is, but you gotta give the guy some credit. He's got an evil grin going there, and I really admire that a lot. So why don't you go ahead and click over on that link I put in the description. Give him a subscribe. Leave a bunch of comments on his videos and say how much you love him and want to kiss him because he's such an adorable looking clown. I mean, I want to, but there's no such thing as clown on clown relations, so that very well can't be. I fucking love goats. God damn. I love goats.